Can I ask you a question? Can you give like a real basic level rundown of the whole when you should consider buying after renting, the rent versus owning? For those of us who maybe don't own property yet, what are the arguments for when you should start looking to buy instead of just continuing to rent for forever?
I want to give a light one first.
Yeah, of course.
The biggest break on that is when you realize that your rent is more than a mortgage.
That's true.
That should be your complete shift. Because I have friends who are paying $2,400 for rent in a city, Pittsburgh or XYZ, and you get a whole house for $1,500, $1,200.
And spell that out one more time. I didn't make this connection for a long time. I hear mortgage and I'm like, oh man, that's a lot of money over 30 years.
You're hearing commitment. You're not hearing price.
Yeah.
And what it actually turns into is actually just another monthly payment, right? That you could be paying less than your.
It's literally, most of the time in situations we see that paying a mortgage is way cheaper than actually paying rent because you could control that. You're locked in that for 30 years. But if Garrison want to raise the rent on his rental properties next year, he could do that. And you're a victim to that. And so, if anything, I would love for people straight from 18 out of high school go straight into home ownership because your credit score is already there, and don't play around with this game of. And I think people like renting because they can just jump out. They can fail if they want, kind of a thing. But then you bomb your credit score and all the other stuff that goes with that.
Can you sell a mortgage before 30 years is up?
Absolutely. It just pays off whatever's left. So you buy a house for $100,000, and then after 2 years, you want to sell it. It's worth $150 now, and that's the best part about a house is the appreciation.
Yes, sir.
And when you buy rent, and I hate to say it, when you have $900 for rent, it's going to a fire. It's going to somebody else's bank account, and what do you have to show for it other than, hey, I get to live here another month? But you own a house, you want to tear down the wall, paint it pink, get a dog without having to pay a pet deposit because that's a little bit ridiculous in my opinion.
Yep, and you can charge whatever you want for that.
You can exactly. And there's no control on pet deposits, pet security, all that. It's so out of control with rent, and I feel like there's a sense of security and independence when buying a house. Plus, and nowadays, and that's why I wanted to connect with a lot of the younger groups. There are so many programs out there.
Yes, you gotta talk about those, especially here in West Virginia.
I mean, there is the West Virginia Housing Development Fund,
which they will put money towards you guys as a down payment to get you in a house.
Up to $10,000, is that right?
Yes.
And there's also the benefit of requesting the seller to cover your closing costs. Which, say you're trying to buy a house, I do with $100,000, of course, and the down payment is 3.5% or $3,500. Closing costs can range for about $5,000. You can request for the seller to cover those closing costs. So you can still have the West Virginia Housing Development Fund of the $10,000 to cover your down payment. I've helped countless people buy houses with no money down. Sometimes, in rare occasions, they do get a check at closing. This
is a lot like the hospitals. They have their own language to make sure you don't understand it. But just talk to us. Talk to an agent, and their whole job is to break this down for you.
Exactly.
So that this isn't complicated for you. And like he said, if say you get the house and you don't want to pay this for 2 months, sell it. And come to find out, it's probably worth more than when you bought it anyway.
Exactly.
Just bail out.
You
I
could
just
flip
wanted
it.
to tee that up for you guys.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vincent.
I have a question.
Yes.
How many people in this room own